So are you able to really figure out when the product is being designed in the design stage itself, whether the frame is strong enough? What happens when various parts of the assemblies move with respect to each other? What happens when the actual loading conditions are applied as in the physical conditions? So if you have tools which are integrated within the design platform that you are using, you are able to design to analyze often and optimize early. And these tools are across disciplines. So some of you may have requirements for a simple static analysis. Some of you may need dynamic analysis. Some of you, for some complex requirements for some industrial pumps, may need computational fluid dynamics. Some of you, if you are supplying components to high-end automotive, you may need tools for plastics analysis. So we have tools which cover the entire analysis process, right from a simple static analysis to the most complex plastic simulation. Another small video will showcase the various applications in analysis that we have in our portfolio. So from a simple static analysis to dynamic analysis to computational fluid dynamics to plastic simulation, there are various tools that can be used to optimize your product design and early in the design process. And finally, manufacturing and production. This is a very important topic that I would want to discuss here, primarily because the focus of the seminar today is about manufacturing. A lot of people are talking about factory automation these days. Well, it's an interesting topic, but most of customers that we interact with, they have not paid enough attention to their factory at the planning stage, because of which the automation at a later stage becomes very difficult. And when we are trying to automate a factory which is already designed, which is not efficient design, it becomes very difficult to optimize at a later end, at the finer end of the process. It is like trying to remove inefficiency from a product at a tooling stage or at an assembly stage. So what we help our customers with are tools which will help you lay out your factories in the most efficient ways, help you lay out your work cells which have the minimum transportation time between one work cell to another one, and finally have the most optimum factory layout. And once that layout is done, you can apply your tools for automation, having robotics and other technologies that you may use. So what we help our customers is, as in digital prototyping for a product, we give you digital prototyping for a factory, which essentially means you can design, you can visualize, and you can simulate your entire factory before anything is built. And how do we do it? Let's have a look at this short video. So this is the bare shell layout, and we start the work cell planning now. This is a very critical phase of a factory layout. If your work cells are not optimized, the automation at the final end will not be very effective. So you can have a visual feel of the transportation times, the total cost, and so on. And once your work cells are optimized, you can actually visualize everything in 3D. And this is a topic which is of great interest to most of our customers, and we've been engaging in factory discussions with a lot of our key customers. And finally, I want to talk about mobile and cloud applications. To give you some history about Autodesk, Autodesk was formed about 30 years ago as a part of a disruption when people started moving away from mainframes to desktop computers. And today we realize that the next wave is going to come from cloud, a shift of people from desktop to cloud technologies. And at Autodesk, we have fully adopted this, and we have solutions which will help our customers to make use of our cloud, make use of the cloud through the technologies that we offer. So which essentially means our customers can do a lot of high-end rendering for their products and factories. They can do a lot of energy analysis. They can do some civil design. They can do collaboration and structural analysis without investing in high-end workstations themselves. So we have adopted these cloud benefits, and they are available to all our customers at no extra cost. And finally, as Mr. Santhanam talked about the future of manufacturing, yeah, manufacturing will become social. Our brick and mortar business will look different. We will have more collaboration. A lot of ideas will come on the go. They need to be discussed, feedbacks to be taken, and finally, how it incorporates into a better design is something that I want to show. This is the path we have taken for the future of manufacturing at Autodesk, and this is going to become a reality very soon. So that's what the future of manufacturing is going to be. A lot of social design, ideas becoming to reality with 3D printing. In fact, we have some solutions where we have written algorithms. You can print a component with a simple print command. No tessellations required, no STL conversions required. And we have a small little 3D printer in our office. It's amazing to see products being printed. You just make something in 3D model, print it out, and some of them are functional, like an iPad cover and so on. And this is something, yeah, additive manufacturing is something that is going to be the defining future of the manufacturing industry. And of course, Autodesk is looking at integrating all of these technologies in our future versions. Definitely, we can help you to be a top performer in more ways than one. A little bit about our company. We have, as I showed to you, products that span across portfolios, be it design, testing, validation, manufacturing, civil design, media, entertainment, and so on. We are a true global company with 6,600 employees. Out of that, about 100 are in India. We have 6 offices here. More importantly, we have 2,400 plus channel partners, and we have some of our channel partners right here in Coimbatore. And plus, we have a lot of students who come out from education institutes. We have taken a decision to donate our software free of cost to all engineering colleges through a memorandum of understanding with the HRD ministry in India. And finally, just to sum it up, well, we can definitely help you sharpen your competitive edge, improve your customer satisfaction, beat your competition, increase your profits, win more customers by Autodesk digital prototyping. So imagine, design, create a real world, a real product, a real assembly, and win in this competitive global world. So with this, I would like to thank you all once again, and it's been our pleasure to be a part of this forum. Thanks.
Thank you so much, sir. That was an interesting presentation. I'm sure the SMB community will definitely be benefited with your product. I now call upon Mr. KV Ganapathy, Managing Director, Broadway Engineering, President of CoIntech, and past President of Codicia, to honor him with a memento. A huge round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Now it's time we refresh our minds. We shall break for a high tea, and we kindly request the delegates to reassemble here in 15 minutes.
Solution partner, Sundaram Infotech, Trade and Investment Country Partner, UK Trade and Investment B-School Partner, Sri Venkateshwar Group of Institutions, Coimbatore. We would also like to tell you about the organizers. We have the Intech. We also have Codicia, along with Texas Ventures, putting together Gmcv 2020. We also have a lot of support from all the subgroups. But without further ado, it's time for the next section. We now welcome our very special guest, Director HSBC Global Markets and Head Foreign Exchange Sales Desk, Mr. Rajat Mehta from HSBC India, to deliver a speech on the title of INR Volatility Not for the Faint-Hearted. I also hope he probably will touch on the little bit of the gold prices and the gold exchanger that we talked about earlier. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big round of applause to Mr. Rajat Mehta, Director HSBC Global Markets.
Thanks so much. I think gold is not for the faint-hearted, but for the heavy-walleted. But once again, my thanks to the event organizers for allowing HSBC to be a part of this fantastic event. I'm really happy to be here. I look after the entire FX sales business for HSBC in India, and hopefully in the next 15-20 minutes, I will be able to scare you a bit more about what's happening on the rupee. It's a pretty topical, it's a pretty current topic right now, given the way the newspaper headlines have been focusing on the rupee. And honestly, it really is not for the faint-hearted. And when you look forward to your manufacturing vision of 2020, one of the things that you have to be very, very clear and precise about is how to hedge yourself on the volatility and the risk that arises out of currency transactions. I'm going to spend a bit of time on the dollar-rupee history, just to give you a quick view of how things actually have happened. It's extremely easy to explain a lot of things to people in India, because you just have to either refer to movies or cricket. In this case, I'm going to refer to movies, especially on music. When you go and see a movie, right, you always have all the titles that come up, and everybody says there's a music composer, Lakshminarayan Pyarelal and whoever else. But there's always a background music, you know, when the villain wants to kidnap the daughter or someone else is getting beaten up. So I think in the currency markets or any commodity market or virtually any other market, it's always a combination of these two things. There's a foreground noise and then there's a background noise. And to take you through the dollar-rupee history and the market snapshot, I hope to identify for all of you the factors that are foreground factors and background factors. If you look, okay, I don't think the years can be seen, but essentially it's gone from 99 to where we are right now. Essentially all major events have always tended to play out on the dollar-rupee, whether it was events that were happening in the US, whether it was events that were happening in the Indian equities, whether India exploded a nuclear bomb in '97, sovereign ratings weighing in on the economy, currently the fiscal deficit issues and the rating warnings that S&P, Moody's and Fitch are giving to India. Essentially, the rupee has always been an extremely correlated barometer to what's really been happening on the economic front in India and what's been happening in the overseas market. A few years ago, we actually had this beautiful imagery of the Indian economy being decoupled. That was a terminology from the global economy. It never happened. No economy can be decoupled from what's happening in the real world. All events have to have a synchronized way of acting itself out. And the rupee is no different from anything else. I want to actually jump into the current frame of what's happening. When the Lehman crisis actually happened, one of the more pleasant surprises that happened in the Indian economy was the way the Reserve Bank maintained its composure in that market and kept the dollar rupee at a very reasonable level. In fact, the rupee strengthened post the Lehman crisis. It kept the liquidity going in the markets through onshore borrowings for local companies who were basically desperately in need of liquidity. And I contrast it to what's happening now. In an environment where really globally everybody has pretty much factored in the background noise, and this is where I come to the foreground noise and the background noise. The background noise is you've got problems happening in Europe. Everybody knows that. Whether they will solve those problems through a breakup of the euro or whatever it is a problem. The US is facing its own set of problems, whether it's going to finally close the quantitative easing program that it had initiated to save the US economy from collapse. We know for a fact also that commodity prices have eased off with the demand coming off from China and India, aside from gold. And it's an interesting anecdote actually about gold. HSBC's global analyst for gold is a guy called Jim Steele, ironically. And he actually made a presentation to us last year where he said 80% of the world's gold is actually bought over by Chinese and Indians. So it's not just the Indians who are to blame. And even the Chinese have this material love for gold. Now, in India's case, a lot of the gold is actually unproductive. It's an unproductive asset that gets stored up as 10-gram coins in, let's say, my grandmother's locker. You know, every month she buys a 10-gram coin very proudly and tells me that the return of investment on that 10-gram coin is far better than my deposit rate. So unfortunately, that's the logic you have to argue with. And I don't think Mr. Chidambaram also has any answer in the short term. But the demand remains there. Now, in the earlier speeches, you heard how much we were facing as a trade deficit, as a current account deficit. So with the background noise of what's happening in Europe, what's happening in the US, India's problems were always there. It's just that we never had a chance to correct them. We lived in our own world of make-believe where we said we have a huge trade deficit problem, but guess what? We will be current account surplus or current account mildly negative because FDI and FII flows will tide us over from that trade deficit. Now you can't keep consuming Samsung phones, BMW cars without producing them in the country and expect the currency to still remain stable. Something has to give, and that's what's really happened in the last 12 to 18 months. The fundamentals have caught up with the economy. There is no running away from that. You run a trade deficit of $12 to $15 billion a month, you need to collect at least $40 to $45 billion a year from FDI and FII. And in 2010 and 2011, when the investment cycle was on for a lot of countries to invest in India, let's say you had an auto company who wanted to build another paint shop in India, because of the conditions of business in, land acquisition was a problem, getting clearances from the government for a lot of other things were a problem. A lot of companies, Vodafone and Telenor, were embroiled with their own issues. A lot of companies chose to bypass India in that investment cycle. So in that investment cycle of 2010-2011, a lot of companies chose to go to, let's say, an Indonesia or a Turkey or a Brazil to manufacture their stuff instead of coming to India. And we've missed that FDI cycle in a big way. And that's the worry now, that Chidambaram's team are trying to catch up with that FDI gap by allowing FDI in multi-brand retail, single brand retail. The problem is no matter what steps they take now, you can hike the gold duty to whatever you want, you can hike the duty on oil also. It will have a lag effect. It's not going to have an immediate impact. We will still be facing this demand and consumption for the next 6 to 12 months, and the trade deficit will remain where it is. So when we look at the events here, when we come into, let's say, March 2013, when we entered Jan 2013, we entered with a sense of euphoria saying the worst is over, the rupee will probably go back to below 50. But guess what? The fundamentals of the market were still there. You can't ignore it. So when you're running with a trade deficit of even $15 billion and FDI and FII tanked, we are where we are. Okay, we're at 57, and every time I go and meet someone, someone asks me, is it going to 60? Now, just a month ago, the conversation was, is it going to 57? So contextually, the conversation just changes to the level. But the reality is, as everybody said here, when you have a problem that you can't fix in a hurry, you will have no choice but to bite the bullet. In our view, the rupee will remain fundamentally weak. The rupee will have problems in the next 12 to 14 months. I'm not a political commentator, but a lot of people are viewing the 2014 elections as an event. I don't know why, but I don't think there will be any miracle solution even at that point. Whoever comes to power will still be grappling with a trade deficit of 12 to 15 billion dollars a month. Just to give you a quick idea of what we actually live in, we are a pretty well-regarded economy. Like it was said earlier, 5% growth rate, hey, anybody would take it. But in India, you need a 9% growth. The factors that you have to really keep, and now it's below 5 in the last one, sorry, so I haven't updated this presentation post that one. But the key figures to look out here are forex reserves of 293 billion. We have an external debt of 365 billion. Now, when you compare ourselves to the Asian and other emerging market peers, these two numbers actually stand out as very favorable statistics. Not everybody has such a low percentage of external debt to GDP as India has. It has a high internal debt because India funds its debt through G-Secs and T-bills that the Reserve Bank of India issues for the government of India. But the external debt is still much, much lower. And at this point in time, the yield that the Indian paper offers is still very attractive for FII investment in debt. Now, FII investment in debt basically is a very simple mathematical process. The guys in FIIs look at what's the Indian yield, buy that paper, take a dollar rupee hedge, and effectively get themselves a dollar yield. Now, when they get a dollar yield, they look at it as a return on their dollar asset. With quantitative easing ending in the US, the yield curve in the US has started picking up. So fund managers across the world no longer are interested in the yield pickup from emerging markets like India or Thailand or Korea also, and are beginning now to withdraw some of these investments and take them back to the US to invest in the G-Sec, in the T-bills there. That's a huge risk for India. So when we again talk about the dollar rupee and we look at that deficit of $45 billion that needs to be made up from FI and FDI money,